I'm a 32-year-old guy working in finance, and until recently, I thought I had my life together. Not perfect, but stable enough. My parents and I weren't particularly close, but we were cordial. I wasn't the favorite kid, though it never bothered me much. My younger sister was always the golden child. She could do no wrong in their eyes. I never resented her for it, at least not until recently. Last year, my grandfather passed away, leaving behind a decent inheritance. He wasn't particularly wealthy, but he was smart with his money, and he left me $100,000. My sister didn't get anything, according to him. She'd already been given more than enough help over the years. She had a history of bad financial decisions, credit card debt, failed business ventures, and loans she never repaid. At first, I thought it was straightforward. I'd use the money to pay off my student loans and save the rest. But before I could even make those plans concrete, my parents swooped in with a proposition. They asked me to give my inheritance to my sister to fund her new business idea, a boutique. I declined, politely but firmly. That's when the pressure began. My mom was the first to start. "You know how much this means to her," she said, as if I didn't. "She's been through so much. You've always been the responsible one. Can't you just help her this once?" "It's my money," I told her. "Grandpa gave it to me for a reason. I'm not going to gamble it on another one of her pipe dreams." Then my dad got involved. His tactic was less emotional, more guilt-driven. "She's family," he said over dinner one evening. "Family helps each other. And let's be honest, it's not like you really need that money." "Are you kidding me?" I snapped. "I've been drowning in student debt for years. This is the first time I've caught a break." He waved it off like it was nothing. "You'll figure it out. You always do." The entitlement was staggering, but I still didn't budge. A week later, I got a call from my sister. She didn't ask me outright. She whined, guilt, and made passive-aggressive comments about how lucky I was to have parents who cared so much about me. I cut her off mid-sentence. "Stop. If this is about the money, the answer is no. You're such a selfish jerk," she spat. "You don't even need it. You have a job, a life, everything handed to you. I'm struggling, and all you care about is hoarding money." I hung up on her. I thought that was the end of it, but then the dirty tricks began. A few weeks later, I noticed that the $100,000 had been transferred out of my account. I was stunned. It took a few frantic calls to the bank to figure out what had happened. My parents, who had access to my account from years ago when they helped me open it in college, had taken the money. I called my mom first. "Where's my money?" I demanded. "Oh, we just borrowed it," she said casually, as if she hadn't just committed theft. "Your sister needed it urgently to secure the lease for her boutique. Don't worry, we'll pay you back." I lost it. That was my inheritance. "You had no right to touch it. We're your parents," she said, as if that justified everything. "We know what's best. This is for the family." I immediately contacted a lawyer. It didn't take long to realize that what they'd done was illegal, but proving it would mean escalating things. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go there. It felt too messy, too personal. I told myself I'd try to resolve it without legal action. I confronted them in person. My mom tried to play dumb. My dad doubled down, calling me ungrateful. My sister, smug as ever, said, "It's not like you were going to do anything important with it." That's when I decided I'd had enough. I filed a police report the next day. I explained the situation to the officer, who told me I had a strong case for theft and possibly fraud. My lawyer drafted a formal letter demanding the return of the money. When my parents received it, they called me furious. "You're taking this too far," my dad yelled. "You'd really drag your own family into court over a little money?" "It's not a little money," I shot back. "It's $100,000. And you stole it." My mom started crying, but I didn't let it sway me. "You did this to yourselves," I said before hanging up. They ignored the letter, so I took the next step. I filed a lawsuit. My lawyer assured me that the case was solid, given the bank records and my grandfather's will clearly stating the inheritance was meant for me. My parents tried everything to avoid going to court. They called family members to mediate, hoping they'd pressure me to drop the case. They spun the story to make me look like the villain, saying I was greedy, heartless, and tearing the family apart over a small misunderstanding. The court case was brutal. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that the money had been a family fund all along, which was laughable. My lawyer presented the bank statements, the will, and even emails from my parents where they admitted to taking the money. The judge didn't buy their excuses. In the end, they were ordered to repay the $100,000 in full, plus legal fees. It was a huge victory, but it didn't feel like one, not entirely. My relationship with my parents and sister was destroyed. Not that it mattered much. I couldn't trust them anymore. But the story doesn't end there. After the court ruling, my parents were furious. They scrambled to come up with the money, but their financial situation wasn't great. My dad called me one evening, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. "Are you happy now? You've bled us dry. Your sister's business failed because of the stress you caused. She couldn't even focus on running it." "That's not my fault," I said coldly. "She's the one who took money she had no right to. Actions have consequences. Don't act like you're some saint," he snapped. "You didn't have to take it to court. We're your parents, and that's supposed to excuse theft?" I shot back. "You don't get a free pass just because we're related." He hung up on me, and for a while I thought that was it. But then they pulled their most entitled stunt yet. One day, I came home from work to find an eviction notice pinned to my door. Confused, I called my landlord. He told me that my parents had called, pretending to be me, and said I was breaking my lease. It hit me like a ton of bricks. They were trying to ruin me financially, the same way they'd done to themselves. I immediately reported the incident to my lawyer, who advised me to file a restraining order. The restraining order was granted quickly, and I made sure to inform my landlord that any communication had to come directly from me. I also changed my bank accounts, passwords, and any shared information they might still have access to. I thought they'd finally back off, but then came the calls from extended family. My aunt called me first, telling me how disappointed she was in me. "Your parents raised you, and this is how you repay them? You're going to leave them destitute just because of a misunderstanding?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I said calmly. "They stole $100,000 from me. They lied, manipulated, and betrayed my trust. This is the consequence of their actions. They're family," she said, as if that justified everything. I was sick of hearing that excuse. Being family doesn't give them the right to destroy my life. They made their choices, and now they have to deal with the fallout. For months, they tried everything: guilt trips, manipulation, even showing up at my workplace to cause a scene. I was forced to involve security to get them escorted out. My sister, of course, played the victim every chance she got. She posted on social media about how I ruined her dream and turned my back on family. Her friends and followers jumped on the bandwagon, calling me selfish and heartless. I stayed quiet publicly, but behind the scenes, I was plotting my revenge. My sister's boutique had failed, leaving her in massive debt. She was trying to file for bankruptcy, but I knew she still had assets she was hiding. Mostly expensive designer clothes and jewelry she'd bought with the money she'd stolen. I tipped off the bankruptcy court, providing evidence that she was attempting to conceal assets. When the investigation was completed, she was slapped with fines for fraud, and her bankruptcy case was denied. She had to sell everything, including her car, to cover her debts. My parents didn't escape unscathed either. The court had ordered them to repay the $100,000, but they were struggling to come up with the money. I knew they were planning to sell their house to pay me back, but I also knew they'd lied on the paperwork about the home's condition to inflate its value. So, I tipped off the buyer's inspector anonymously. When the inspector discovered the hidden issues, the sale fell through. They had no choice but to lower the price significantly, leaving them with almost nothing after repaying me. By the end of it all, they were financially ruined. My sister had lost her boutique, her social circle, and her reputation. My parents had to downsize into a tiny apartment, their once proud image in shambles. Did I feel bad? Maybe a little. But then I reminded myself of everything they'd done. They stole from me, lied to me, and tried to destroy my life when I refused to roll over for them. They deserved every bit of what they got. And honestly, it felt good to finally stand up for myself. For years, I'd been the quiet, responsible one, the one who always cleaned up their messes. Not anymore. Looking back, I don't regret my decisions. Sometimes, family isn't about blood. It's about trust and respect. And once those are gone, there's no going back. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button. Who knows? Maybe next time, I'll tell you about the time my sister tried to con me into paying for her wedding. Spoiler, it didn't end well for her.